Welcome to Mentor. I'm Rachel Ford.
And I'm Marco Bertozzi.
And we are the founders of TheZoo.London, consultant collective and executive search.
And our podcast is all about sharing hard-earned lessons from senior leaders who have,
Been there, done that. Yeah. And they're here to guide you with insights that you won't find in a business book, but you can use in everyday life. Coming up today, we have Kerry Glazer, OBE. I knew she was going to be lovely. She's anybody that knows Kerry, everybody loves Kerry. And she's got, lots and lots of great wisdom. And something that sat with me was that she said, don't be afraid to shake things up. You to move forward and transform, you've got to make those tough. Even if it feels difficult, you've got to shake up the status quo. Yeah. Do not be afraid.
I mean, she did it herself.
She did, didn't she? Well, yeah, she brought in Victoria Fox. Yeah, exactly.
I quite liked. She gave some great advice at the end. We're not going to tell you all about it, but she advised us all to have a fuck off fund.
Yeah.
So listening to hear
what that means. And in very, very Kerry style, she said the value of pay it forward. So don't expect an action that you do today to pay off tomorrow. But boy, that will come back. And you will be rewarded for really leading with kindness, being kind, being human, pay it forward. So yes, lots of great advice coming up.
Fantastic. Well, before we get her in, we'll have a word from the sponsor, shall we?
Yeah, we'll talk about our producers. And then we'll get Kerry in. Hey, Marco, when you think of a great mentor, what words come to your mind?
I think smart, definitely supportive, obviously wise and experienced for sure.
Yeah, I think the same really. And, someone knowledgeable who pushes your ideas beyond your first ideas.
That's why we chose Viral Tribe, because they've helped us on our podcasting journey.
Yeah, you could say they've been our podcasting mentors, couldn't you?
They
have been our ultimate support system, helping us with creative ideas, production. And with state-of-the-art studios like we're in today in the heart of Soho, London, they're not just brilliant at what they do, but they make the whole process seamless and stress-free.
And they work with some of the biggest creators, producers and brands, making everything from chart-topping shows to branded entertainment.
So if you're thinking about launching a video, an audio, a live podcast, make Viral Tribe your podcasting mentor.
Drop them a line at hello@viraltribe.co.uk, and if you quote mentor, they'll give you 20% off your first 3 bookings.
So what are you waiting for? What are you waiting for?
We're excited to have Kerry Glazer, OBE. We've had a number of
a lot of honours. We have a lot on the honours list.
We've had some honours in the room, so thank you for joining. One of the UK's advertising industry's most quietly influential leaders, a master of values-led leadership, fairness and long-term impact. She began her career as a nurse, learning lessons about care, trust and human judgment that still guide how she leads today. After discovering advertising through a placement at JWT, Kerry built her agency experience before joining AAR in 1999. She became CEO in 2006, reshaping how brands select agencies, prioritising transparency, relationships and integrity over theatre. Beyond business, Kerry has championed people and culture, serving as president of WACL, trustee of NABS and chairing the Time to initiative to end sexual harassment in advertising. 2025, she was awarded an OBE for services to advertising and charity. So all in all, a career defined by impact, empathy and influence.
Wow, how does that make you feel, Kerry?
It's a bit weird when you have to sit through it, isn't it?
Could you just send me that
so
that I can just listen to that over and over again? That's wonderful. It's one of the nicest things I've ever heard.
Oh, well, listen, it's you, Kerry. It's all you. And we are so delighted you could join us today. And it's, I know we're going to have a really lovely chat across the next 40 minutes or so. But just to set the scene and to help listeners and viewers get to know you a bit more if they don't know you yet, we always say career in 60 seconds. It doesn't have to be 60 seconds. How many years? 47 years?
I think it's 47 years.
So you just do your best, but it's just a good kind of set the scene, if you don't mind, Kerry.
I was quite alarmed by 60 seconds. It's mainly because it's been quite random. Honestly, you know, I always think of as a career as being something incredibly linear, and where it's clear that someone has logically built at each stage. To be honest, I've gone all over the place, but each thing somehow has, I think, fed into what I did next, even if it looks like an unusual move. So to go from nursing to advertising, for example. Yeah. But did A-levels at 18. I had wanted to be a nurse from the age of about 12. I come from a very ordinary working class family. My dad was an electrician, my mum was a school dinner lady, and no one in my family had gone to university. So I didn't even think about university. I just thought about going, you know, to be a student nurse. And this was in the days before nursing was a degree-based profession. So I qualified as a state registered nurse, so 3 years essentially, clinical nursing, and then a bit of what they used to call block, where you kind of learned anatomy and physiology and you did your nursing exams. And then I went straight onto night duty for 2 years as a staff nurse on a male surgical unit and a cardiac unit. I think it may have been kind of 2 years of night duty that wore me down. I mean, I did love it. But I think I got to the age of, by then, I was 23. And I sort of, I wanted to go back to college. I had a real desire to do a degree. And I think it's, you know, those kind of roads where your pathway intersects. One of the things I thought about was actually doing a conversion to medicine, to train as a doctor, which qualified nurses could do at that time. But I had arts-based A-levels and not science-based, and I didn't have the confidence that I would be okay and to study medicine. So I thought, well, I'll just go back to college and I'll do an arts degree. And 3 years in, we were sent out on work experience. I don't quite know how it happened. I can't quite remember. But I got sent to JWT in their information and research department. And I just loved it. I loved the creativity. I loved the atmosphere.
It must have felt quite glamorous, I would think.
A bit like Mad Men.
I mean, it had been bodily fluids and kind of stewing, you know, kind of pot noodles up until that point. And then it was this glamorous business in the middle of Berkeley Square. So, just so many clever people around, and it was the time where, I mean, television advertising was probably at its height. You know, wonderful campaigns, and JWT was winning a lot of business at that time. And I met Martin Jones because he worked in the information and research department then, and we became friends. So we've been friends for a very long time, as well as business partners. And cut a very long story short, by the time I graduated, there was an opportunity to work with Martin in the information department, and so I took it, thinking, oh well, I could go back to nursing in the future. I've still got my registration, and a year later, I ended up in account handling. There was a particular account director there that I'd worked with very frequently, and he said, "You should be a suit." So I joined that next intake of graduate trainees. I sort of got in through the back door because JWT was quite posh then. And that was it for the next kind of 6 years or so in account handling.
So that's a bit of serendipity. We talk about serendipity quite a lot in this podcast. And when you spoke then about a squiggly career, well, actually, you talked about not a linear. I think a lot of people have squiggly careers. And the other thing that Rory Sutherland said, that a lot of careers are retrospective, and you're just trying to make order of like a series of different
rationalization.
Exactly. So I think you're exactly where a lot of people sign that seat are exactly the same as you.
That makes me feel better. That makes me feel better. So I met Gay Haynes. She was our new business director, and I'd worked on some pitches with her. I'd led the graduate trainee program 1 year and just kind of loved all of the young talent coming through. And she moved to a company that was called Kendall Tarrant. I think it's now called the Talent Business, but she moved to, and it was a headhunting exec search business. And I ended up joining her because she was having a great time, I think, expanding the business. And I joined her to help with recruiting account handlers for creative agencies.
Oh, wow. We missed that bit. Sorry, missed that bit.
No, but this is the thing.
I missed that bit, sorry.
So that was 3 years as, in talent, basically. Really, really enjoyed it. And learned a great deal about the industry, because you're placing
You've got to be in it. You've got to be in it.
Really understand, what various agencies' cultures are like and what they need from their talent. And in many ways, it was really great preparation for AAR because it's a similar kind of requirement.
Exactly. Matchmaking, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I thought, 7 years at JWT, 3 years at Kendall Tarrant in talent, and then I had my first child. And it's something which is a particular beef of mine about how women particularly combine careers with having families and, don't find themselves derailed by it, by the responsibilities that women still carry as being primary carers for the family. And I decided that I would take, once my daughter Ella arrived, I'd take a bit of I didn't stop working, I just went freelance for a while and kind of wandered around. I did a bit of work for Martin at AAR. I ran WCRS's training program for a couple of years, and I did some new business consultancy for BBH. So I was still working, but much more flexibly in the first couple of years of her life. By which time Martin himself had decided to leave JWT, had joined Lindy Payne at AAR as her managing director. And Lindy at that time was beginning to think about selling the business that she had founded brilliantly and run for 25 or 24 years. And Martin said, well, okay, I'm up for doing this. Called me up one day and said, do you want to help me buy AAR? And I mean, if you think about how ridiculous that is, really, I'd run an account in an agency. But I had no idea how to buy a company. So Martin and I sort of put together a deal essentially with Paul Phillips, who had also joined AAR at that point to lead the media consultancy. And we found a VC. I mean, why they lent us money? I look back on it now and think this is insane, but they did. The bank, NatWest Bank,
fortune favours the
lent
brave.
us money. Absolutely, we were very bold, really.
Yes,
and the three of us put our houses on the line. Again, I'd look back and think, what was I thinking?
Yeah, young family.
Exactly. I was pregnant with my son when all this was happening. The deal was done when I was very pregnant. And after that, I joined Martin and Paul on a sort of permanent basis as commercial director, then managing director, and then, as you say, in 2006 became CEO. And we were very equal partners, actually, although we had kind of fancy titles, and Martin and Paul did what they liked to do best, essentially, which was to run the pitch business that is very much the bedrock of AAR. And I ran the business, but sort of focused on new business and expanding the business and developing it. But we always made decisions together. We were a very tight partnership. Yes, we fell out occasionally, most definitely. But that was it. I didn't move again for 25 years. And finally decided that the company needed a new CEO, because AAR is now 50 years old, 51 years old. And I think to keep a company relevant, you have to be very cognizant of the transformation that businesses do need to go through. You've got to unsettle the status quo every so often. And my feeling was that unsettling the status quo in the business was long overdue by the time we got to 2019. And so I told my two partners about 18 months beforehand, right, we need some new fresh eyes, new vision here. And we managed to persuade the incomparable Victoria Fox to come and join us as CEO of the company. Absolutely. She had been running joint CEO of Leader, and also I think on the main board of the group. And she was just central casting for the role. And I was also thrilled that she was a woman, because Lindy had set the extraordinary foundations of the business and they've given it the values that it still has. And then kind of, I suppose I took it on to a degree, and then Victoria is now, has grabbed the baton with both fists and is driving the business forward brilliantly. And so I would happily have gone over to you, but they very kindly invited me to stay to run the board as non-exec chair, because at the same time as I stepped back, AAR became what's known as an employee ownership trust. So the shares that Martin, Paul and I owned in the company were sold to the company, and it's now owned indirectly by everybody who works there, including Victoria. So it was a very nice way to rounded way of ending that. And then after 6 years of doing that, I also, at the same time as I went non-exec, I took on the chair role of a creative studio called Untold Studios, which was a creative startup in the visual special effects and I suppose cultural content space. Everything from making music videos for Adele through to doing extraordinary magic on ads, and particularly creature work, so creating creatures in visual special effects, and then special effects for everything from Doctor Who to The Crown to amazing work. Now that was a learning curve. I didn't really expect to be learning new things at the final phase of my career, but I think I probably learnt more in that 6 years with Untold than in the previous.
It's very energising, though, isn't it? When you know.
And to put the icing on the cake, you got an OBE.
I did. I think they made a mistake.
Oh, God's sake. Kerry, that's just you. You're amazing. You're amazing. Just listen to what you've...
No one was more astonished than me, I have to say. It was...
Well, what a lovely thing. And to go down to the palace.
Oh,
how was that?
Do you know, it was... I mean, having my kids were the two most amazing days of my life. I mean, I still maintain that. But honestly, Investiture Day is magical. It really is, because... in the same way that Britain does pomp and circumstance on the world stage with such aplomb, the way in which you are made to feel by everybody you meet, including, whichever member of the royal family gives you your award, is just extraordinary. It is the most special thing.
And walking through those gates must feel like going,
it's amazing.
Do you get to? Is there a way of sort of getting to know, not well obviously, but other people that are there? Or are you all sort of kind of...
I mean, people are in their family groups, because you're allowed to bring I think it's 3 people with you. So I had my husband and my son and daughter with me, and everything is beautifully choreographed. You're brought through the doors of the palace. People greet you at every stage. You're chaperoned through. You're briefed wonderfully, with a very senior equerry showing you how to curtsy.
Don't high five.
Exactly. I mean, I met the Princess Royal, which again I was thrilled to do, because I sort of feel that if I do understand anything of why I received the award, it was because of the importance I've always attached to women in our industry and doing things that perhaps help the next generation of women in our industry. And so to receive it from her, because she's bloody amazing, she's Olympian, she works harder than any other royal there is, and she was just the most charismatic and regal person I've ever met, and incredibly warm and well informed,
That well informed. I think that's the thing. They take it very seriously.
Oh,
I think,
absolutely.
Yeah,
it's a very special moment.
Wow.
But it was great. My whole family cried, so it must have been quite special.
That's nice.
That's so lovely. That's so lovely.
So, rewinding a little bit.
Yes.
One of the phrases you hear a lot in our business is, no one's going to die.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Or no one's died, whatever the phrase is. And so I think it's interesting that, how did you find the kind of nursing side of things, and then obviously getting a taste for the advertising world? Like, did that feel a comfortable switch? Did you feel like you were giving up on what some people might think is more worthwhile?
Oh yeah.
Kind,
Absolutely. I mean, my mother never really understood what I did in advertising.
Oh, mine doesn't now.
They never do.
Exactly. They kind of can't quite get their heads around it really. And almost until the day she very sadly passed away, she'd say, if she talked about me, she'd say, "Yeah, she used to be a nurse."
Yeah.
Because
she knew what that was.
That was actually what she was probably most proud of. I mean, I think that the point you make about nobody died, it's a really salient one. And there have been moments of crisis in the last kind of 30 years or so in the industry where you're laying there at 4 o'clock in the morning and you can't sleep, you're really
stressed
anxious,
out.
Shit's in the fan, you don't quite know how to solve something, and it feels very real and very problematic. The truth is, had I run a drip through too quickly when I was nursing a patient, there may well have been a chance that they would have died.
Yeah.
Whereas, what I had, it was really useful context. Whatever I was doing is that, I mean, clients might threaten to kill you, but they don't usually.
Yes.
And so in most cases there is a solution if you work hard enough to find it, and you can get everyone in alignment behind that solution. So I think it was useful preparation for what can be a very high stress, very challenging environment.
It's not to belittle what people do feel when you get to those, because it is very real.
Yeah.
And also I think
a lot of money involved as well.
Yes, yeah.
But also I think, and more relevant in the last few years probably than before, but a lot of responsibility, like advertising can carry a lot of responsibility for how it shapes culture and society. And I think that's something that probably we've only really worked out in the last few years. Is like, actually our actions can help society and change society. And,
media can be a force for good, can't it?
Absolutely.
Really can.
And you see it everywhere. I mean, at when I was at JWT, one of the last things I worked on there was the Macmillan Nurse Appeal. And we had this extraordinarily audacious objective of raising £10 million, which at that point was an awful lot of money, to make sure that we could still fund Macmillan nurses, and to support patients with cancer. And you look at Macmillan now, the most extraordinary organisation. That was the foundation that led to what it is today. And so you're right. And I mean, I also think that, and I see it particularly because both my kids work in the industry now, and I think our industry, when I look at what it was like when I was young and how it is for younger talent in the industry today, the sheer responsibility we have for the well-being of our young talent coming through is huge. Because the stress they work under, the number of channels they cover. We did telly, cinema, press occasionally, the odd radio ad. I mean, when I look at the breadth of the agency teams,
I mean, that's kind of
challenge they work on is huge.
Huge. It is.
You didn't really have plan. I mean, when we started out, and Rachel and I both started as graduates at Zenith, and so we've come full circle as well. But there weren't really planners then, because it was
I think I was one of the first planners.
Straightforward kind of environment. But then,
exactly. And like looking back at those agency years, because obviously, almost like the the nursing period of your life did take you, look, we can get through this. Like you would have seen some horrific things on that night shift. I suppose then when you look at your agency years, which is your next kind of step, when you look back on that, what are the particular learnings you got from that, or what are your, I suppose, are the behaviours that you learned at JWT then that well clearly helped you move into the AAR? But if you look back at those days, what do you think you learnt most working at an agency?
I think resilience, actually.
Okay, yeah.
Because I think you have to be resilient in a slightly different way to how you are within the NHS or working in medicine and healthcare. I think that understanding how to get the best out of people was a really big part of what I learnt in that 8 years, because yes, you do have to work as a team when you're within a kind of a clinical team within the NHS, but there's quite an interesting pecking order, if you like.
There's a hierarchy, isn't there?
There is a real hierarchy. And yes, there's a hierarchy which exists in our world as well, in the world of creativity and advertising. But I do think that there is a genuine belief that good ideas can come from anywhere.
Absolutely.
That actually the need for collaboration, the need for aligning people, behind one single sort of intention, whether it's bringing your client on board, sort of wrestling with a creative team, whatever it is, learning those skills of how to get the best out of people with a degree of diplomacy, care and intention, so that you do get to where you need to be and you bring people with you. I mean, I have to say, I do think things will have changed over the last 40 years, but I saw some shocking examples of bullying and poor behaviour in medicine and nursing, because I suppose the stakes are quite high, but there was a sort of, we went through it, so you're going to go through it sort of attitude. The idea of the matron, and how I was terrified of, because you still had matrons when I started, and we were all terrified of the consultants who were like gods.
Well, that's that
hierarchy, isn't it?
Didn't that blow up recently? It seemed to dissipate quite quickly, but there was a sort of rumblings of, the abuse of power of surgeons and consultants, and in that
and sexual harassment as well.
We're going to come on to time too in a little while, actually.
So I think that sort of understanding the dynamics of how a group of people can come together and do something really quite extraordinary. And that kind of elation that you would get from a team working together on a pitch and winning, and the friendships it forged, and amazingly the lack of competitiveness. I've always been kind of quite astounded by, we're a really nice industry in comparison. We're
not ruthless, are we?
Not. People always think it is, and it's cutthroat. It's actually not. We're really optimistic. We're actually really helpful to each other.
I can say generous with our time,
generous of spirit.
Absolutely.
Respectful of other people. Achieving things. Celebrating triumphs. And I'm sure there are sort of moments of Schadenfreude where
I think agencies are. I always enjoy it when senior salespeople, career salespeople or commercial, go into agencies, because there's always a moment where you wait a few weeks and then you have a chat with them and they're like, how do these things operate? Because they're not all, sales is quite, everyone roughly is pointing in the same direction because they all need to hit their bonus. Whereas in agencies, you're collaborating across countries, across teams, and no one reports to anyone, and yet somehow
it works.
And I think people always go, it's amazing.
I mean, it can be massively chaotic as well.
Of course,
But I've sat in pitches where just the absolute joy I have felt at watching an agency at the top of its game, presenting things. You can just see the client's shoulders go down and see them reacting emotionally.
I was going to say, it's a physical and emotional reaction, isn't it?
It's not just about business in that moment. And it was a real privilege to witness it, and seeing a really good idea take off.
Fabulous.
And when you did any of that, because you sounded, when you were talking about your start in the AAR and how you got to that, you sounded like you weren't on a path to change the industry and improve the industry. Or did some of these agency years sort of make you start thinking about?
Yeah, I mean, it was probably a combination of influences. I mean, I'd always been involved with NABS. I became a member of WACL in 2001. It was an awfully long time ago now. But I could see that there were important things that groups of people within our industry, wanted support with, and I was quite drawn to those things because I thought they were important, and that they mattered. And actually, I think there's a cycle in a career that you sort of spend your 20s working out what you're going to be and how you're going to get there. And then your 30s, it's the getting there, and then I think you get into your 40s, which I would have been around this sort of time, the AAR time. And it's when you really are in your pomp almost, in most cases you are really forging a much more senior career, and I think you start to have the opportunity to give back, and you should at that point, and I suppose that's where I began to be really interested in how you could change the status quo. Again, collectively, bringing people with you. I mean, you take WACL at that point, it was a group of, it was less than 200 women, but they were all pretty senior women and pretty influential women. You think, galvanising that group of women to speak out, to support the next generation, to campaign, as it had been doing, but having more of a focus on that was...
Well, when you were president, I remember I sat on your exec and we grasped the nettles, didn't we? Like, because that's the thing about you. You're very quietly, like you're very influential, and like when you talked about your characteristics before around that caring nature, and you'll bring people with you, and you definitely did that when you were president of WACL that year, because we had to grapple with a few nettles, and you do it with your charm. You're very charming. You're a very charming person.
I think it was honestly, I can't emphasize this enough. There were so many kind of what do they call it, parents of that, sort of so many people. So I can remember being very influenced by Lindsay Clay when she was president a couple of years beforehand, and I sat on her exec committee. I was her on secretary, and I remembered Lindsay's very direct, and she says what she thinks, and her talking about how, we're not going to have exec meetings where we talk about the chair covers at the dinners. We should be talking about much bigger issues, and it had a real impact on me. So I often credit Lindsay with making me think, ooh.
Well, I was going to ask you, because I was going to ask you, like, through your career, obviously you've worked with some incredible people and interacted. So would you say Lindsay was one of your mentors, or who would have your mentors been through your career?
Absolutely. I mean, mentors, I would say Lindy Payne,
right?
Who has been endlessly supportive and generous and a role model, and just the most kind of treasured friend, really, but also capable of giving me a sort of metaphorical slap around the head if I needed it, you know. But I mean, honestly, amazing support. Tess Alps is also somebody that I would go to for advice. Again, clear, direct, and John Bartle. So three sort of icons, if you like, from the industry that I had the privilege of spending time with and would go to. And if anything, it was the way that they all had a generosity of spirit. They were all people who understood the importance of giving back and doing the right thing and helping where they could. So they were immensely influential. And then Lindsay and Hannah Brown is another person, both good friends, but both very direct, truth tellers, would not dress things up, you know, and would be prepared to speak out, even if what they said wasn't popular.
Yeah.
You know, that I think sometimes we're a bit frightened to tell the truth, because we're worried what other people will think. But they, I mean, there are so many other people I could mention.
I know, and those the three icons, as you say, was that more informally versus formal? Because as you say, they were just very generous with their time. So it springs to mind that Karen Stacey talks about your career. It's about the beginning's about learning, the middle's about earning, and the third bit is about returning. Yes. So I think we do see quite a lot of that. That's mentorship is a lot about returning and giving back and trying to help other people, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And all three of those people in different ways have been immensely influential in all of those ways as well. So I mean, I suppose if I think about it, you know, Lindy had founded AAR, and I was carrying the torch for her, because it was so important that we kind of sustained the values that she had begun with the company, and it still espouses all of those values today, and they're really good. That's why we're still here. I think
50 years later.
Say we, but you know,
but it's been your family for a long time, hasn't it?
Absolutely. And similarly with Tess and with John, and I think that. I think that matters. They, you know, weren't only superlatively good at what they did good stuff in the industry as well.
Yes, so they returned.
And that, so, I mean, it's always, so I had dealings with Paul Phillips when I did new business at Zenith. And it must be an interesting place to be, sort of in the sort of heart of everything. And you having been an agency as well, that kind of crossing over into that world. How did you manage that kind of the relationships? And I'm sure people were wanting to get on your best side and all of that. What's that life like when you are right in the sort of eye of the storm?
I think you've got to tread so very carefully, because, I mean, the way in which AAR is structured, we have always had two sets of customers. You know, one were the brands that we work with, and the other were the agencies we work with, and they were both customers. And I think the need to divine a path whereby you really sought to make sure the interests of both were served. I mean, I think there are lots of views about pitching and the impact it has on agencies, the cost to agencies, the time that's spent, the investment that's required in every possible way. I mean, when I started out at AAR, I naively thought to myself, it will be, my intention is we get rid of the pitch. The trouble is,
all agencies try to do it. We're no pitching. All agencies say we're not going to pitch, and then what's going to happen? You're going to pitch.
Nobody wants to get rid of pitch. This is my problem. The number of times we've discussed it with the IPA, and so I know I'm going off on a tangent here. But if pitching is going to happen, you can at least try to make sure
that process
you know, has integrity, that it's a level playing field, that there's no kind of double dealing, and that agencies are treated with respect and properly. I mean, it was the most privileged position to be party to what were often very sensitive pieces of information from both parties, not just from brands about their businesses, but from the things that agencies would disclose to you because they trusted you and they knew that you would never use it in a way that would damage them. So I think that's why it was so important that we did. And you know, sometimes you know, we were not out there, we were not loud, we didn't talk to the press, we didn't do lots of promotion about AAR, and we sometimes get criticised for that. But I think it was the right way to be, because we did carry so much responsibility for behaving properly in what were very sensitive commercial situations for both parties. You know, and agencies are by and large tiny businesses compared. You're all SMEs. Dealing with great monoliths.
Global mega brands.
Global, you know, UK brands, whatever. And it was really important that you didn't ever lose sight of that.
And thinking about those times as well, like you had the responsibility, but also there must have been moments where you had to make some really tough decisions. And obviously those decisions are going to affect your people, they're going to affect clients. Can you look back to like a decision that was like, you think, oh, that was the hardest decision I personally ever had to make in your career? Or is it just a series of decisions?
I mean, you know, there is no doubt that, I mean, back in, when was it? It was, I'm trying to think which year. Was it 2008, the financial collapse?
8-9. Yeah, 2008-9, yeah.
I mean, AAR had always been a very, very stable business, very stable. And we were very careful in the way that we managed the business. But even, you know, at that point, no one knew what was happening. Clients were in disarray. Agencies were having a tough time. And we, you know, not only did we, you know, have to sort of, we got the whole, well, it was only a tiny team of about 14 people, but everybody agreed, you know, to take a reduced salary. We all took it. But then, you know, as things were difficult, we did have redundancies. And, you know, so many people in our industry have gone through cycles of redundancies as we've gone through those kind of, you know, peaks and troughs of the business. And just knowing that, you know, someone's going to have to go home and think, okay, you know, what am I going to do next? How do I put food on the table? You know, those sorts of responsibilities I used to find, you keep me awake at night, you know, the planning leading up to it, you know, how best to support that person, you know, after they'd left the business. Because you there's a human responsibility here, so those sorts of things were always difficult. There was one particular occasion actually where we were approached by a pro-life organisation, and they wanted to run a pitch. And Martin, Paul and I always made decisions together. And the agreement was that if one of us didn't want to do it, we didn't do it.
Yeah.
But on this occasion, I lost because I didn't want to do it. And it was because, you know, I felt that women
it's choice,
have a right to choice.
It's choice.
And I felt really, really uncomfortable about AAR undertaking this pitch. But we did it. And it was the only occasion where I felt that wasn't a decision I was happy with. It was a decision that I was, you know, I could have turned around and said, look, I'm sorry, I'm the CEO, we're not doing it. And I didn't, and I still don't know whether that was right or not. But it was, I mean, it didn't cause a schism between us because we just carried on. But I was deeply uncomfortable about that decision, and I probably wouldn't make the same decision today.
You'd behave differently if you had that time again.
I would, in the same way that, you know, I would look at getting home to pick my kids up from school differently. You know, because we've been through the pandemic, we know we can work from home, we know we can work flexibly. This is something that WACL champions. You know, I felt I had to be there because presenteeism meant that I never picked my kids up from school. I'd change that.
I know. There's a few of those things that we change, aren't there?
And you must have been one of the most well-connected people in the industry at the time with senior leadership. I wonder, you know, this podcast is all about leadership and not just your own, but what you've observed in others. Is there anything you've taken away from meeting all those people and seeing them in action and so on about, you know, the best bits of leadership that you
is this Kerry's magpie moment?
Yeah, it's a kind of magpie, like things that you would either take away or just observed in other people.
I mean, I never fail to be surprised at how many people suffer from imposter syndrome. That underneath this enormously
Steve King,
confident.
he sat in that chair. He admitted he
did.
Imposter syndrome.
I mean, people who are just giants.
Although I've got to ask you, I've got to tell you this. When I said to Sir Martin Sorrell, I said, look, say what you like. You know, Steve King, he said, you know, he had imposter syndrome. You can, you know, this is a safe space. And he said, what's imposter syndrome?
That sounds like some Martin Sorrell.
Yeah, absolutely. It made me giggle.
I mean, there are, you know, when people are sort of, you're sitting over a bottle of wine with somebody and what they will tell you about their worries, sort of extraordinary leaders. I think what I have seen, Martin and I discussed this at length about this notion of people who do well are those who don't always do things because they can see there's an immediate commercial return from it. And I mean, we've all been to those kind of dinners where there's a very senior client who's just lost their job, where before people would be clustered around them, and they're just standing there like Billy No Mates because everybody's over there.
You're not important anymore,
and
that's wrong.
It's I think the leaders who I think for me have always stood out are those who, number one, I think lead through a lens of kindness, and Rachel, you have always had that reputation.
Oh, well, thank you.
Leading through.
Tell my family that.
Of kindness that informed decisions that you made and how you went about what you did. But this notion of the economy of generosity, and this was a phrase that Martin coined when we were discussing it, and I nicked it. Used it ever since. This, sometimes actually you're just generous or decent with someone, or you give them their time, or you reach out to help them, and there's no expectation of any return coming back from that. And I will say now, 10 times out of 10, it always comes back to you in some way. It always does. And and it might be a reputational thing. It might be that, that reputation that you are somebody who people should go and talk to, that people should trust, comes from that. But it also comes back to you in genuinely hard business commercial terms as well. And we used to say to agencies, because they used to get, sometimes they'd be going on about campaign, they've written this dreadful thing about us. And, it was really funny because campaign journalists would say, you know what, we never hear from them unless they've got beef about something. Yeah. So, if you would reach out to a campaign journalist and kind of just shoot the breeze, share some information, just kind of be a mate, really. Yeah. It's much easier to pick up the phone and say, please, just can you tone that down a bit, rather than there being absolutely no interaction in between. So it's just being a decent
I was going to say, it's common decency, isn't it? Yeah. Being human. Yeah. We're all human. We might, Yeah, I agree.
We always ran towards clients that had just lost their job. Yeah. Because when they went somewhere else and they wanted to do something, who did they pick up the phone to?
And I'll tell you what, the reverse of not being nice is the other one. And I'll tell you what, karma's a bitch. Do you know what I mean? Wait till till you're sat in that room pitching to that person who you left in the corner.
Absolutely.
Which I think I do it from a common decency point of view. But as you say, acts of kindness pay dividends.
They
not
do.
Just today, but further down the line.
They do. I mean, there are all kinds of studies out there about. I mean, there's a kind of social contagion, isn't there? I think the BBC did a big study about how paying it forward would also have an impact with people then paying it forward to a complete stranger. There was this kind of social contagion about it. But I think it's great business practice. And if I look at the leaders where I think, you've done well because you always take people with you because they trust you, they believe in you. You're generous of spirit.
And authentic as well.
Absolutely. I'd rather be known for that.
Yeah, and you absolutely are known for that, Kerry. You're everybody loves Kerry. I am really concerned we're really running out of time, and I definitely wanted to touch on time too.
Go for it.
Obviously, there was a moment in time, it was coming from the stuff that's happening with the States, but obviously that work is obviously to end sexual harassment in our world. What was it? But obviously there was a lot happening in the world. What made you decide, right, I need to personally get a group around me and take a stand on this?
I think it was the Harvey Weinstein.
It was a Me Too bit, wasn't it? It was coming out of Me Too.
And WACL were always looking at. We would have kind of small get-togethers, which I think WACL still has, and we did it with NABS, and I was thinking more about sexism in advertising than perhaps sexual harassment, but we organised an evening debate which people were invited to, not just WACLers were there, NABS were there, and we thought, or we fully expected, it's a thing of the past. You know, it used to happen back in the 70s. And it was a really dark night because it became very evident that it was very present, it was very now, it was happening to a lot of people.
Yeah.
And we sort of came away from this WACL night with, we can't
we've got to do something.
Lean into this. And really that's how Time 2 was born. Tess was our first chair. It was Tess that led the first year of Time 2, and WACL, NABS and the Advertising Association formed an alliance, and the Advertising Association was very, very influential as an umbrella organisation for all of our trade and professional associations, and then NABS, who kind of basically knew how to do it, because that was their focus on well-being, and some might from WACL. And it was an extraordinary coming together and collaboration between these three groups of people who could see, we can't let this continue.
No, and the practical application of it is there's training, isn't there, behind it, so people can become Time 2 accredited, and and then
that's the game changer. I mean, obviously with the advertising industry, so we used advertising, brilliant advertising from Lucky Generals to sort of raise awareness that it was still happening, having carried out some research. But I think the thing that has become the absolute game changer, beyond asking agencies to endorse being part of the movement to stop it, was then developing an incredibly strong training program that agencies could run internally in their own organisations, not just to bring it to the attention of their staff, but to give those in those organisations the tools to make sure that it didn't happen. How to call it out. It's really difficult sometimes if you're a bystander and you see it happening. What is it you say?
Well,
how do you go about that?
My daughter was telling me, though, there's a potential law coming out that you can actually be charged for being a bystander if you don't do anything.
You can do nothing.
Yeah, and it's kind of I think it's opening up the conversation, and you've just got to.
And were you? I mean, it obviously was very high profile. Were you happy with how everyone reacted, like the companies reacted to it, in terms of?
Yeah, I mean, we had extraordinary support from people signing up to be endorsers. I mean, from holding companies like WPP were our first holding company who signed up across the board to Time 2. But we also understood that the companies would be nervous. And I can remember Helen Cowcraft and Tess and I discussing this notion that because we know it's still happening, we know that companies, and they're all quite small companies, are going to be very worried about whether this has happened in their own businesses. And I think to look at things retrospectively is going to be really damaging.
So just move forward.
Time 2 sort of drew a line and said, right, this is the line we're drawing. This is the movement, this is the initiative that we now want to make real in our industry. And so this is about making a positive change, and that was the attitude. I think that did help people come with us, because the research that we'd done, serious sexual assault, rape, I mean, unbelievably, I mean, primarily women being on the receiving end, but not solely. Some, there were, I think, about 9% of men that had suffered sexual harassment too.
And do you go back and look at the stats, or there wouldn't be any more research going in? That was a stake in the ground, was it? What's happening in the industry?
That was back at the first year of Time 2.
Do you go back and say, have things improved?
Yes, because the Advertising Association runs their
the
census.
Yeah, the all-in census.
And we have a question in there which monitors it.
Please tell me it's going in a positive direction.
Oh, yes. Okay. Yes, I think in the last census, it was 1% of men and 1% of women who reported at some point having, I think, either experienced or witnessed sexual harassment.
Right, yeah.
So that's a pretty small percentage.
Yeah, it is.
I think, although they're not directly comparative, because it was a qualitative study we did, it was about 44%, and it was particularly 44. High amongst the 18 to 24s.
Really?
So even their first
so it wasn't people that had experienced it years ago. It was people that are experiencing it right here, right now. Well done, Kerry, for grasping that nettle. You grasp the nettles with elegance. So I think we are going to probably be on our.
Let's end with a reflection.
Shall we end with a reflection? Yeah, let's end with a reflection.
I think, I don't know why, but it always seems to get people thinking the most about if you think back and you were going to give your younger self some advice now about careers and and going through that all
it's
these
not going to be that
question
stages. It's not that question.
What's the one truth you'd tell her that she would want to hear?
Oh my gosh,
this is it. Yeah.
Crikey. That's a really tough question.
We want to end on a toughie.
That's a really
tough question. If it's too difficult, then you can just talk about what advice you'd give them.
Yeah, look on that little Kerry doing
because I really want the truth to be a good truth, and I would say never shy away from shaking up the status quo. It's really hard to do it. And you do have to screw up your courage, but shaking up the status quo is where real change can happen.
Yeah.
And it can be a small thing.
Yeah.
But that's quite important.
Yeah.
We shouldn't always do what we did before.
Yeah.
And I think advice, I'm going to swear now, but I would say always have some fuck off money in the bank.
Yeah.
3 months. I mean, I know it's really hard with how much cost of living is, but if you can get some savings into the bank and leave it sitting there, so that you have a choice if you find yourself in a situation, any life situation, but particularly at work, where it can't be solved, because sometimes it can't be. You're in a toxic situation that you can't escape from because you're financially trapped. It gives you choice to be able to walk away.
Yeah, I love that. The fuck off fund.
It's
a fuck off fund. Yeah.
And great, if you find yourself in the happiest place ever, you've got a great holiday.
Yeah, exactly. A really good holiday. Yeah.
3 months' money in the bank.
Well, you heard it here. The fuck off fund from Mentor.
We'll take that. It's a good idea.
That sounds fine. Brimming with advice.
I could have done with it a couple of times.
Yeah, I know. Exactly. Note to self. Oh, Kerry, thank you. I knew you'd be gorgeous. You are fabulous. Welcome. You're very well loved, and we're delighted you could join us today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Well, that's all we've got time for. Make sure to do all the things you're meant to do with podcasts. Share, follow, like. You can find us. Comment. You can find us on Apple and Spotify podcasts and wherever you get your podcasts.
And if you need a little more wisdom in your business, then be sure to come to TheZoo.London for executive search and consulting support. And don't forget, Marco.
Don't forget. We're as slick as ever.
We love to hear about your mentors and advice. Find us and drop us a line on our socials listed in the podcast description.
Mentor is a Viral Tribe production.
And do join us next
time.
That again? Oh, maybe. We're
going to do it again.
And we also do Viral Tribe Entertainment Production. Yeah.
That was
fine.
Too shaky.
Yeah.
Too shaky.
That's all.
Well, that's all we've got time for another episode. Please make sure to share, like, comment.
Do all those podcasty
things. You'll find us on all your favourite podcast platforms, including Apple and Spotify.
And if you need a little more wisdom in your business, then be sure to come to TheZoo.London for executive search and consulting support.
And we love to hear if you have any feedback or comments. Please Come to all our socials that you'll find the links in the About section of the podcast. We'd love to hear from you. And Mentor is a Viral Tribe entertainment production. So join us next time for more pearls of wisdom from Mentor. Thank you. See you soon.